You're not addicted to lust. You're just trying to find your way back to yourself. You felt it before that loop. It ends only to begin again, alone in a dark room with nothing but the screen's glow left to cling to. The craving rises uninvited like a tidal wave, swallowing every bit of resolve you swore by just yesterday. Again you sigh. Why can't I stop? You think you're craving the body, but really you're missing your soul. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Until you make your unconscious visible, it will continue to run your life and you'll mistake it for destiny." Desire in everyday language is reduced to biology, a natural impulse. But for Jung, it is a message from the shadow, the repressed, hidden part of your psyche. If you keep avoiding it, if you keep fighting without listening, you're waging a war you cannot win, because your enemy is a part of your own abandoned soul. The shadow, according to Jung, is the sum of everything we deny: emotions, memories, instincts, wounds, longings, all that society or family labeled as ugly or sinful. But this very shadow is also the exiled piece of your spirit screaming through addiction. Imagine standing before a mirror, not one that shows your face, but a mirror of the soul. In it, you don't just see yourself, you see the parts you've forgotten. A trembling child left alone when they needed to be held. A young man taught that desire is a sin. A person striving to be perfect while their instincts are left to starve. Lust is merely the final mask of the darkness. It's not the problem, it's the invitation. An invitation to return, to confront, to become whole again. This video is not about how to suppress desire, nor does it glorify abandoning it, because Jung never believed instinct was evil. He taught that whatever is rejected becomes dangerous only when we refuse to engage with it. Together we'll explore, why does the addiction keep repeating? Why does avoidance deepen your emptiness? And how can we stop fighting lust and instead decode the deeper message it holds? You'll see that underneath every click, every surge of craving is not a physical urge, but an ancient loneliness, a childhood wound, a cry for help from a soul torn apart. In the next section, we'll dive into the first 3 levels of the 9 layers of unconsciousness behind lust, where you'll realize that your shadow is not as terrifying as you think. It's simply a part that's desperately longing to be embraced. Keep watching if you're tired of resisting without ever truly understanding. And if there's even the smallest part of you still longing to reconnect with who you really are, the part that's been abandoned for far too long. Lust, the mask of the shadow. There's a truth few dare to face. Lust is not the problem. It's a signal, and that signal comes from a place we've tried to forget: the shadow. Carl Jung once wrote, "The shadow is the person you would rather not be, but who is still living inside you." In the modern world, saturated with body images and commercialized desire, our shadow no longer hides in the dark. It wears seductive clothing, shimmers with dopamine, and appears in every swipe, every seemingly harmless click. The shadow is not scary, it's just abandoned. The shadow isn't a monster, it's the rejected part of you, the part someone once told you you shouldn't show. It could be the feeling of worthlessness when someone once said you're not good enough, the pain of being rejected the first time you expressed love and were laughed at, the shame you carry about your body from being compared or mocked, the anger that was never expressed now repressed into obsessions and fantasies. And in sexuality, the shadow becomes even more complex because it touches both instincts and wounds. Some use sex to control because they once felt powerless. Some crave attention because they were once invisible. Some become addicted to porn, not out of passion, but because it's the only place they feel seen. And lust is no longer desire, it becomes anesthesia, not life, but an escape from a nameless pain. Lust doesn't arise when you're weak, it arises when the shadow is activated. Think back to the last time you were pulled into craving. Were you feeling worthless at work, facing rejection in love, or just lonely in your own home? It's not random. That's the moment your shadow woke up. It whispered, "I've never been heard. I'm still here." And to get your attention, it used its strongest weapon, desire. But instead of listening, you tried to kill it. And the more you tried, the stronger it became. Instead of killing desire, ask it, where do you come from? The life-changing question is not, how do I stop wanting, but rather, what is this desire trying to tell me? One man once shared, "I was addicted to sex completely out of control, but during meditation, I saw my inner child sitting alone on the stairs, mom crying, dad walking away. And I realized I didn't want sex, I wanted a hug. When we listen to the shadow instead of banishing it, we begin the process Jung called individuation, the journey of integrating ego, soul, and instinct. It's not a clean path, it's filled with darkness, but light waits at the end of that tunnel. If you're still reading, maybe you're ready to stop running, not back into old habits, but back into your true inner self. Leave a comment below. I used to think it was lust, but now I see it's actually when you share, you don't just heal yourself. You create space for others to feel less alone. And who knows, your story might be the mirror someone else needs to finally see the part of themselves they once forgot. In the next part, we'll peel back the second layer, dopamine, the imposter of happiness. You'll understand why your brain feels alive while your soul quietly fades. You'll learn to tell the difference between stimulation and connection, a high and true aliveness. And for the first time, you'll pause not to control your desire, but to understand where it's truly coming from. The shadow is not frightening. It's simply waiting to be heard. And lust. It's not the enemy. It's just the first doorway leading you home. Now let's move on to the next door. Dopamine, the imposter of happiness. There's a paradox in modern psychology. We live in an age of maximum stimulation. Yet we are lonelier, more numb, and spiritually hollow than ever before. You can access 10,000 provocative images with just a few taps. And yet for the 10,000th time, you close your phone and still feel empty. Why? Because we've mistaken dopamine, the promise of reward, for true joy. Carl Jung once said, man cannot stand a meaningless life, but the modern world only offers stimulation. And stimulation without depth only leads to collapse. Dopamine, the journey toward what never was. Every time you're drawn to an image or a flash of temptation, a biological wave stirs in your brain. Dopamine activates your craving system. It whispers, you're about to get something important. Just one more click. This time will be different. But you know the outcome. It's just a deeper void. Dopamine isn't pleasure. It's the promise of pleasure. Like standing before a dazzling golden door only to open it and find an empty room. Shadow and desire. When dopamine feeds old wounds. Why are we so easily addicted? Not because we're weak, but because a part of us has been starving for a long time. Someone neglected by their mother may yearn for desire in strangers' eyes. A boy once ridiculed for his looks may grow obsessed with being wanted. A girl shamed for exploring her body may carry guilt every time desire arises. And dopamine, like a short-acting sedative, soothes the wound temporarily. But each dose pulls you further away from your true self. You're not addicted to images. You're addicted to the feeling of being wanted. But dopamine doesn't offer love, it offers illusion. The difference between stimulation and connection. Dopamine makes you feel alive, but it's a synthetic high. Real joy doesn't come from biological spikes, but from connection. And connection doesn't require heat, clickbait, or drama. It requires known judgmental presence. Dobens, the ability to withstand stillness, the courage to listen to yourself without needing to fix anything. In a noisy world, the ability to sit still is a revolution. Jung wrote, the soul doesn't shout, it whispers. And if you cannot dwell in silence, you will never hear it. Start with tiny moments. If dopamine is the driver of activation, then true joy is the practice of receiving. Begin with walking without headphones, drinking coffee without checking your phone, looking into the mirror and asking, what do I truly need? These small moments, if repeated, rewire your nervous system. Dopamine stops driving your soul and returns to its rightful role, a biological signal, not the master of your life. If you've ever felt broken because you couldn't control your habits, know this. Millions are like you, carrying the same shame, the same longing to be seen. Comment below it, I once confused dopamine with true happiness. Or simply share your story so someone else knows they're not alone. We're creating a Jungian space where every shadow is welcome, where no one asks, why aren't you fixed yet? But instead invites, bring your unfinished self here. If dopamine is an illusion of happiness, beneath it lies the emotional hunger of the inner child. In the next part, you will discover why most addictions trace back to neglected childhoods. Learn how desire becomes a misguided healing mechanism. And most importantly, learn how to speak to your inner child. If you've ever felt unseen, the next part is your answer. Dopamine only makes promises, but your soul is waiting to be present. Don't let dopamine keep you chasing illusions. Meet yourself right here in this moment. The inner child is still waiting to be loved. Do you remember the first time you were abandoned? Not physically, But that silent chill in your parents' eyes when they were too busy to hear you speak, the moment you cried and no one turned back. The first time you realized, if I'm not good, I won't be loved. Carl Jung once said, the child in us remembers everything, even what the adult has forgotten. And it is that very child, never held, never acknowledged, who now whispers through every addiction, every moment when you feel out of control. Desire doesn't come from instinct, but from a child starving for love. When you feel pulled by desire, pause and ask, what am I truly needing? Most answers aren't sex, they are. I want to be touched without being judged. I want someone to choose me without needing to earn it. I want to cry and not be seen as weak. Desire then becomes a distorted self-healing mechanism. It isn't bad, it's just a misfired signal because you were never taught how to embrace the child within you. 3 techniques to reconnect with the inner child and heal from the root. Write a letter to your inner child. Imagine sitting beside a 7-year-old. That's you. Start with the words, I'm sorry I forgot you. Let the words flow. Don't judge. Don't edit. Just write as if you're holding your own hand when that child version of you was still trembling and alone. Ask daily questions. Whenever desire arises, instead of suppressing it, ask, what emotion just came up? Have I felt this way as a child? If my inner child could speak, what would they say? These questions untangle the knot between today's desires and past wounds. Practice inner holding each night. Before bed, place your hand on your chest. Close your eyes. Imagine sitting next to your younger self. Say, I'm here. I see you. You are not too much. You are not too little. You are enough. These affirmations, when repeated daily, soften the unconscious terrain once dominated by the shadow. You don't have to heal alone. Let's share together. Every time you talk about your inner child, you open a sacred healing circle where others can look into your story and say, oh, I'm not alone. Comment with, I see the child within me, or share a childhood memory so you and others can hold it together. Carl Jung believed we are not saved by avoiding the darkness, but by walking into it with light in our hands. And sometimes that light comes from community, those brave enough to look within. When desire no longer excites, but becomes a habit. There's a strange yet common phenomenon. Many who have long been trapped in desire suddenly realize they're no longer excited. They repeat the same behaviors, but like a machine. No fire, no soul. This isn't collapse, it's a sign you're ready to move to a new phase. The phase where you stop running and start listening. The phase where the shadow no longer screams, because finally someone sat beside it. Are you ready? In the next part, you'll dive deeper into the layers of addiction. When desire no longer stimulates but numbs. When you no longer crave but also can't feel. And in that moment, you'll learn how to return to the unfragmented self, where you don't need to suppress or force, you just need to be present. If you've ever felt like I'm alive but dead inside, the next part is a call to awaken your soul. The child within you has never disappeared. They're just waiting for a hug from you. Now let's step into the sacred terrain where the shadow is finally heard, and you at last can fully be yourself. When desire no longer seduces but merely distracts you from feeling. There is a phase in the healing journey that few speak about. No more intense cravings, no more guilt after every relapse, only emptiness. You keep repeating the same actions, not because you want to, but because you don't know what else to do. You're no longer crushed by desire, but swallowed by numbness. Carl Jung once warned, there is nothing more dangerous than a disconnected soul, and the greatest disconnection isn't chasing the wrong things, but feeling nothing at all. Numbness, a spiritual paralysis, born from lack of meaning. Dopamine was once the fake fire, but when the fire dies, what remains is the ash of emotion. You begin living like a machine doing repeating scrolling. You go through the day with no expectation. You check your phone not out of craving, but because there's no better option. This is not laziness. This is not a lack of control. This is hunger for meaning. Viktor Frankl in Logotherapy, Rediscovering the Meaning to Live. In Auschwitz concentration camp, when every feeling had been stolen, psychiatrist Viktor Frankl discovered what kept people alive. Meaning. Not pleasure, not comfort, but a reason to keep going. Frankl wrote, those who have a why to live can bear with almost any how. Logotherapy, the therapy of meaning, teaches us that we don't heal by eliminating pain, but by finding a why powerful enough to walk through it. So how do you find meaning again when you're numb? Serve something greater than yourself. Start small. Write a post to help others going through what you once did. Cook a meal for someone who's hurting. Send a thank you message to someone who once touched your life. When you give what you once longed for, you awaken the flow of meaning. Create to reconnect with your inner source. You don't need to be an artist. You just need to create. Write a poem about your sadness. Paint a picture of your inner shadow. Record your voice when your mind feels empty. Creation doesn't need a goal. It only needs honesty. And in that honesty, you begin to feel alive again. Reconnect with nature. Turn off technology. Turn on your senses. Walk alone in nature. No music, no podcasts, just breath and earth. Their silence becomes deep enough for you to hear your soul again. You don't need to get over numbness to start living. Live through it. Numbness is not the enemy. Numbness is your body saying, I've lived too long without my soul. See it not as a diagnosis, but an invitation. Jung once said, man becomes truly alive when his life takes on symbolic meaning. Every small act of meaning is a symbol that you are coming back to life. We are walking through the numbness together. If you're in a phase where you feel nothing, want nothing, comment below, I'm still here, I'm still listening. That small statement can anchor someone else in the storm. And you will also see, even without fire, your heart is still beating. Every comment is a keeper of the flame. In our Jungian journey back to wholeness, for those who choose to be present in the darkness rather than run from it. In the next part, you'll step into the deepest zone of transformation, where you're no longer controlled by desire, nor need it to feel alive, where your shadow is no longer an enemy, but becomes a guide, where you begin to master yourself not through discipline, but through understanding. If you've ever wondered, who am I if I no longer chase cravings? The next part will answer that. You are not numb, you are being invited back to your soul, and right now, through every meaningful act, you are answering that invitation. When desire fades, who are you? Meeting the inner pilgrim. There comes a moment each of us has faced when desire no longer excites joy, is no longer something you chase, and all that remains is true silence. In that silence, you stand face to face with yourself. No more noise, no more dopamine, highs only breath, and a single question. Who am I when I no longer need to chase desire to feel alive? The pilgrim archetype, a symbol of awakening. In Jungian symbolism, the pilgrim represents the soul who leaves behind the familiar path, a life once fueled by desire to embark on a deeper journey, a journey of self-discovery, of reconnecting with the soul and returning to the essence of being. The pilgrim doesn't know the exact destination. They only know this: the old road will no longer take them where they need to go. And so they courageously let go of desire, not because they're weak, but because they're strong enough to seek another way. You are the pilgrim. When desire no longer pulls you forward, you step outside the loop. There is no longer a want to chase nor a want to escape. You enter sacred silence where each step you take is a footprint of newfound freedom. Pilgrims have no map, only an inner light to guide them. And on that path, you begin to learn the difference between desire and intuition, between the social ego and your true essence, and most of all, the peace that comes from no longer forcing yourself to be someone you're not. Symbolic moments on the path of the pilgrim, leaving the old self behind. For too long you lived as someone else, the person society expected, the one craving control, the one creating illusions to be loved. When you drop these roles, you pass through the razor's edge of emptiness into a space where you are simply yourself. Touching the stillness at the center, the wanderer archetype isn't afraid of solitude. They learn to lean into the silence, to hear the smallest sound, the breath, the heartbeat, the soul still alive. Walking without knowing the destination. The beauty lies in not knowing where you're going. And that is the miracle. The journey isn't defined by outcomes, but by the walk itself. Every step matters simply because you are the one taking it. You are not lost, you are wandering to find home. The feeling of being lost is not failure. It is often the beginning of awakening. Pilgrims are not afraid to be lost. They understand that every turn brings them to a part of themselves that was once hidden. You may feel disoriented, lost, or lonely, but look deeper. This is not the world abandoning you. This is your soul calling you home. Connecting with the pilgrim community. If you feel you're walking this path, if you've ever thought, I'm no longer driven by desire, but I'm not sure what comes next, leave a comment below. And I am a pilgrim on an invisible path. When you share, you are not alone. And when you see others walking beside you, the journey no longer feels lonely. It becomes a shared path of awakening. Practices to walk with your inner light. The pilgrim's daily ritual: spend 15 minutes a day asking, "Today, who am I if I'm not chasing desire?" Write the answer in a journal without judgment. Just write. Because every page you open becomes a new layer of your inner map. Small actions with big meaning. Long journeys don't begin with epic leaps, but with small, consistent acts. Write a thank you letter to the pilgrim within you. Offer a random act of kindness with no expectation. Care for yourself in a way that feels sovereign, not because you should, but because you know you're worthy. Walk into nature with no goal, no destination. When you stand beneath the sky, you don't need to prove anything. You simply exist, and that's the most powerful act of the pilgrim. In the next chapter, you'll explore why the ego fights hardest right before your breakthrough, why you're most tempted to relapse when you're closest to freedom, and how that's a sign of awakening. How to quiet the ego storm and step into the final stage of transformation. Freedom without craving. If you've ever thought, "I've come so far, why am I slipping back?" The next chapter will bring clarity. You are no longer the one chasing desire. You have become the pilgrim, and the journey isn't over. Your inner light is just beginning to shine. Let us now step into the next chapter where the shadow no longer leads the way. You do because you are now awake. You may have arrived here weary, tired of the repetitive years, worn by a habit you once believed you could never escape. You may have once felt broken, as if desire had overtaken you. But now pause, breathe, and look back at the path you've just walked. You didn't give up. You didn't choose to shut off the video and retreat into familiar loops. You stayed with yourself in the most honest, raw, and courageous way. Carl Jung once wrote, "The tree that reaches to heaven must have its roots in hell." You are that tree, and this journey was your brave descent into the deepest parts of yourself. You are not an addict, you are awakening. Desire at its root is only a symptom. What you truly seek is not pleasure, but meaning, connection. The feeling of being seen, touched, understood. And the moment you begin to see yourself more clearly, to realize no craving can ever consume your soul. You are no longer controlled. You are in command. Comment to resonate, share to heal. If there was a moment in this video that moved you, made you pause, made you feel seen, leave a simple comment: "I am coming home." You might think, what difference does one small comment make? But you don't know how many others are silently searching for a sign that they are not alone in this fight. You leave a footprint, not just for yourself, but for the community. And if you felt touched, click subscribe, not because this channel needs numbers, but because you need a place that reminds you light always waits on the other side of darkness. A place that won't judge you, rush you, or fix you, but gently lifts you with understanding. Each week, videos like this are shared not to make you better, but to remind you you were already whole. Ending not a finish, but a beginning. You may have once felt small, overtaken by desire. But now you know this. You are the one who walked through it to reclaim yourself. The path isn't easy, but you are not walking it alone. And from this very moment, you can become the light for others. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. But today you chose not to live by fate. You chose to face the darkness and walk through it by the light of your own soul.